Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack. I'm a certified life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I want you to know that no matter your season or circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life. And I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 50. I am beyond thrilled that I have made it this long. It's hard for me to imagine that I have recorded 50 podcast episodes. So thank you for being here. And if you're new, welcome. It is entitled Pain versus Suffering. I think this is such a good topic, but before I get started, I just wanted to invite you to my Seasons of Joy community. Just making another plug, come join us, learn what coaching is, learn how coaching can help you create a life you love, no matter your season or your circumstance. It's an opportunity to see how it works, the things I teach, and the difference it can make in your life. So tonight is open coaching. It's an opportunity to ask questions about anything. This month, we have been talking about navigating our seasons with love, and so you can have questions about that, but it can be on anything. So just click the link in the show notes to join, and you can come tonight and see what coaching is all about. If not, if you can't come live, you can always watch the replay. So on to this episode. So today's episode is what I call pain versus suffering. And I think this is such a relevant topic for today. I think many of us don't understand the difference. I don't think I did. I think that I didn't realize that, yes, pain is part of being human, but suffering is optional. And I want to illustrate this with a story. And I've shared before on this podcast my family's love of being in the outdoors and going on adventures. And we were on a family backpack trip. And this is different than the one I talked about earlier, but we seem to always have some kind of adventure when we are out in nature. So we were on this family backpack. We were with some extended family, and I had 4 of my 5 kids with us. My youngest was about 2, and so she wasn't able to come, and so she was staying with my parents. So then I had my little boy was probably about 4 at the time, and then my little girl was probably 6 or 7, and then probably 10 and 11, right? Somewhere in there. The range was probably 12 to 4. And everybody had their own pack. My older 2 boys, again, were bigger, so they could carry more. So they carried all their stuff and a little bit of group gear. And my younger 2 had their own little packs, but they were packed with mostly just their clothes, right? Because they were small. So they had their clothes, and we went on this 6-mile hike. It was beautiful, and we had a great time. We love being in nature. And so after we spent a few days there, and then it was time to hike out, and we got our gear all packed up and our packs ready, and we started on our way. And it didn't take long before my daughter just started complaining, right? And saying that she was tired and that her bag was so heavy. And I didn't get it. I was really confused because all she had in there was her clothes, right? And so we're like, what, Jen, Alicia, you're fine. You're fine. Like all you have in there is clothes. You're fine. Like, let's keep going. Like, let's just move through this, trying to encourage her. But this went on for a little bit. And we finally were like, something is going on here. How can we, we got to check this out. So I remember grabbing her pack and picking it up. And I was like, holy cow, this is heavy, and unzipping it. And to my surprise, this pack was full of rocks. It was full of rocks. And I was like, so surprised. I'm like, why do you have all these rocks in your pack? And she's like, but they're so pretty. I just want to take them home, right? And needless to say, we left those rocks behind. We maybe let her take one. But I think it's so interesting. Like, she chose the rocks that she wanted and she put them in this pack to the point where it slowed her progress. It prevented her from hiking out and moving to where we wanted to go. And I think we do this with our emotions as well, right? Oftentimes we resist our emotions and we just stick them in our backpack, if you will, right? An emotional backpack. And we load it with these emotions that we don't want to feel. We don't want to feel the pain. And our packs become so heavy because we aren't dealing with or processing the emotions that we're choosing to pick up, right? We just carry these emotional rocks around with us and we suffer, right? And suffering looks like reacting to our emotions and compounding the emotion by freaking out, by pushing and resisting against the emotion, dramatizing it. All of this creates suffering. But like I said in the beginning, suffering is totally optional. Pain is part of being human, right? But suffering does not have to be. We can learn to not be afraid of our emotions. Isn't that an interesting concept, right? We don't have to be afraid of our emotions. We can actually learn to embrace them. And when we do that, we can grow and we can even thrive. I've seen this for myself. We can become emotionally mature and emotionally resilient. We become the creator of our earthly experience rather than the victim of our circumstances. Now, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? If you're a member of my faith, we believe that we came to earth to actually experience the opposition in all things. It tells us in the scriptures that that was the point of coming here, was actually to experience the opposition. That contrast of life is actually what makes joy possible. Sadness makes happy exist. Hate makes love exist. Without the negative emotions, we would not know the positive emotions. We know that abundance feels so amazing because we know what scarcity feels like, right? Negative emotion lets us know, it teaches us what we don't want. Well, at the same time, when we come to understand what we don't want in our mind, in our life, it helps us move towards the things that we do want in our life. Our emotions are our greatest teacher. So as humans, it's important to understand that we are going to experience 50% negative emotion. And the other 50%, we're going to feel positive emotion. This is normal. It's when we believe that it shouldn't be that way when we create suffering for ourselves. That's when we create this suffering. And I want you, just like my daughter, who's carrying this heavy backpack around of rocks, not processing our emotion feels our packs and weighs us down and limits our progress. We often have this false belief that we shouldn't experience negative emotions. And if we do, we're doing life wrong. Isn't that crazy? But I think we all do this at some point. And sometimes we stay in that. We stay in that because we believe we're doing it wrong when we feel uncomfortable, right? But then that makes life so much harder for ourselves. It loads our pack with rocks. But the better that we can get at processing negative emotion, we actually create more space in our pack for positive emotion. And negative emotion, this is important to understand. Negative emotion won't hurt us. And again, this is what makes positive emotion even possible, right? We wouldn't know it was positive had we not experienced the negative, right? And an emotion or a feeling, and I use those interchangeably. Oftentimes the emotion is the name and the feeling is the sensation within our body, what's happening for us when we feel that emotion, that vibration in our body. That's what an emotion is, right? It's this vibration in our body, the sensation that happens in our body. Even the worst emotion that you can even think of will not be awful physically, right? We can handle the most uncomfortable emotion. Now, I want you to think of that. Like, what is the most uncomfortable emotion you can think of? And when I was getting this podcast ready, for me, it was grief, because I've experienced grief over the last couple of years and it doesn't feel great, right? And so I want you to imagine that I can inject this grief into you, right? I'm going to tell you, I'm injecting this grief into you, and it's going to vibrate through your body for about 60 to 90 seconds. You might feel a tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your chest. You might get sweaty, right? You might feel a pit in your stomach, but you could handle it. Wouldn't feel great, but it also wouldn't be the end of the world. And I have come to believe through practice and experimenting with this concept that the skill of processing our emotions is one of the most important skills that we can learn while we're here on earth. It can become a superpower. Now, once you're good at it, right, it can completely change your relationship with yourself, with your loved ones, with other people in your life, and with God. When we can learn to process and manage our emotions, this opens us up to a rich and beautiful life. This happens because we don't react to our emotions. We don't resist our emotions. We don't buffer away our emotions with overindulgent behaviors that don't serve us in the long run. Behaviors like overeating, right? Using food as a buffer, using pornography as a buffer, overspending, overuse of technology, right? The list can go on of behaviors that we use to move away from the uncomfortable. When we can get good at feeling the uncomfortable, it's life-changing. And we can do this through becoming a compassionate observer. We observe ourselves experiencing these emotions with compassion and understanding that emotions are normal and natural, all of them, right? The Savior experienced all the emotions, all of them. That's how he experienced humanness. Even though he was a God, he had emotions. And I think that is true. I think we are children of loving heavenly parents that have emotions. They aren't robots. They are dynamic and beautiful beings, right? And so when we shove our emotions into our emotional backpack, right, we prevent progress, prevent evolving, and we prevent or stagnate our becoming. Now, before I learned the skill of processing my emotions, I was afraid of them. I don't know about you, but when I grew up, that wasn't something we talked about. It wasn't something we learned to do, right? I believed that if I allowed myself to feel these emotions, then I would feel out of control. And I thought that being emotionally mature actually meant not feeling those uncomfortable emotions, right? Falsely believing that I needed to put my big girl panties on and just push through them and ignore them, put a smile on my face, right? But doing all I could to avoid the discomfort, right? Everything we do or don't do really is because we're trying to not feel the uncomfortable. But lugging around my emotional rocks only created suffering. So there are two skills that I want to share with you today on how to be emotionally mature and help you move away from emotional suffering. And this means embracing the uncomfortable and eliminating the behaviors that you used to use to avoid feeling that discomfort, that emotion, right? But also understanding that you don't need to escape them. You can handle any emotion with courage because it won't hurt you. So now it's important to understand that allowing is not reacting and feeling is not displaying. That is really important to understand. We can have an emotion without reacting to it and without displaying it. That's where the power comes, is being with it without reacting or displaying. One of the emotions that I have learned over the last few years to allow is actually anxiety. I know what anxiety feels like for me in my body. I get a tightness in my chest. It's heavy, right? I feel weighted. My heart quickens and my mind will start to race. It's a dark blue mass and it sits there, right? But understanding this about anxiety and how it shows up for me, once I paid attention to this and just acknowledged it, I could observe myself feeling this emotion, right? Observing what was happening for me and being open to it because I knew it wouldn't hurt me. And the more I have practiced this, the more I can say that I have gotten better at understanding what anxiety feels like for me and allowing it, processing it without reacting and without displaying. So I understand now, for me, what anxiety feels like. And the worst thing that's going to happen in the moment that I'm feeling, and I'm going to say in the moment, right? And some of us battle anxiety in more moments. I get that. But in the moment that we are feeling that anxiety, I feel the vibration and discomfort of it. And again, I'm not reacting, not resisting or fighting against it, not doing anything with it. I just watch and I wait for it to move through my body while I am reminding myself, I feel anxious. I'm not anxious, right? There's a difference. I'm a human being. I'm a daughter of God who feels emotion. And I remind myself, I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And in this case, I'm feeling anxiety because of something, a sentence in my brain, right? And for me, if I can sit with it and just remind myself that and watch myself, watch it and wait for it to move through me, right? It softens. It softens. That emotion softens in about 90 seconds. And I can say that with a surety. I know there's a scientific study that I could quote, but I don't have it. All I have is real life experience. When I do this, it softens in 90 seconds. Now, does it go away? Anxiety, no, it doesn't. It softens, and then I am able to take the next step forward and the next and the next. And as time goes on, it dissipates. That anxiety dissipates. And at some point, I notice that it's gone. It's magical. It's magical. And practicing the skill of being willing and allowing all my emotions actually has empowered me to set my emotional rocks down, right? My emotional rocks that have caused me suffering, right? The rocks aren't bad. The rocks are actually beautiful. It's when we carry them around and we don't ever set them down. right? And so I've learned to set those rocks down. I look at them, I notice them, I acknowledge them, and I set them down, which allows me to create space in my emotional backpack for more of what I want in there. It leads me to this second skill that I want to talk to you about, which is creating wanted and needed emotion. This begins by thinking deliberately and intentionally, right? Intentionally creating an emotion that will fuel desired action, which then creates momentum. This takes practice, it takes believing, and it takes commitment. And I had a coach explain it this way. I want you to imagine a platter of emotions, all the emotions. Which ones are you choosing? Which one are you pulling off of that platter and putting in your pack, right? Think about that. What ones do you want to choose, right? What ones do you want to choose versus the ones you are currently choosing? Is it time to choose something different? Because our emotions drive the actions and the inactions we take. I want you to think of it like this as well, like a car, right? We fuel our car. Good fuel makes a car run well. I remember that years ago, we had this Suburban and takes a lot of gas, right? And I remember not thinking clear, grabbing the diesel gas and filling that full of diesel gas. And I didn't realize it. I mean, it has a green handle for heaven's sakes, but I didn't realize it until after it was full. I had fueled it with the wrong kind of fuel. If I ran on that, it would ruin the engine of my car. So I had to drain that. I had to release that fuel and replace it with good fuel, right? Or sometimes we don't put fuel in our car. I live out of town, and sometimes I go a little longer than probably I should with gas in my car. And I get down to the end, and then I pray on my way into town that I will make it, right? Running on empty, sooner or later, the car's going to stop. It's not going to work, right? So we need to pay attention to the kind of fuel and if we're even fueling our tank. This is the same with us, right? We need the proper fuel to get us where we want to go, to grow and to become the person we want to be the person that can put good into the world, to connect with ourselves, which allows us to connect with others and to connect with God, right? So where do we get this fuel? Think about this. Most of us do it haphazardly, right? We wait and we see what comes along. We wait for inspiration. We wait for motivation. We wait for excitement to come upon us before we get to work. And with our cars, we go and we get fuel. We even pay for fuel, right? We're willing to pay money. We don't love it, but we pay money to fill our car up, to fill our tank with high quality and plenty of fuel. We need to do that for ourselves. We need to take responsibility for the emotional fuel that we use for our lives. And it's a choice. Again, it's a choice, the fuel that we're going to put in our tank. And suffering is optional. When we learn how to feel our emotions, right, this skill of feeling our emotions, then we can use them as tools to create whatever we want in our life. The way we learn to feel is by calling on the thoughts that we believe that will create these emotions. And that is the key here, is finding thoughts that we believe. I'm all for affirmations, but there comes a point when you have to find a thought that is believable. It's believable. And then you can begin creating the results you want in your life. So I want you to consider a result that you do love in your life right now. What have you created in your life that you love? What emotion created that? What emotion fueled the actions that you took, right? I want you to think of it as currency, right? You use this emotion as currency towards getting what you want and what you need. It is an amazing resource. What does that emotion that you've imagined, what does it feel like? How does it feel in your body? What are the physical sensations that happen for you when you feel that emotion that helped you create that result? What do you think you need to think in order to create that emotion again? What was going on for you to feel that emotion, right? How can you decide? How can you commit to begin practicing feeling and inviting and creating that emotion into your life today, right? Begin today to create that emotion. What will you do? How will you act when you feel that way? And then how can you notice, like, once you understand how it feels for you, you're going to know when you start to kind of get off track a little bit, right? What can you do to help you swing back to where you want to be, to begin fueling that emotion and those actions, right? Creating that emotion that fuels those actions. What can you do when you notice you're not accessing that emotion or creating that emotion? Make a plan and then practice. Practice, 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 right? Practice doesn't make perfect, but practice makes progress. Make a plan and practice. And as I've been working on my coaching business, I've leaned into the uncomfortable. The technology, the marketing, the articulating have not come easy to me. And in the beginning, there was doubt and insecurity and fear, but I needed to change my emotional fuel to something different. I needed fuel like curiosity, commitment, and love. And practicing thoughts that created that fuel, right? Thoughts like, I think this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun to see how it all works out. I'm not sure how, but it's going to be fun to figure it out. I love this work and I believe it can make a difference. So let's do this, right? It's going to be worth it. I've got this. I can do hard things. It's going to be amazing. With God, anything is possible. Now, doesn't mean that I never feel fear or doubt or insecure. No, I still feel those things. I still do, but I don't live in them. I don't suffer in them. I acknowledge and I allow these emotions, but I don't fill my tank with them, right? So this is my invitation to you. I want you to look at the emotional fuel that you're using in your earthly journey, right? Is it time to choose better fuel? Pay attention to your emotions today. Just stop throughout your day and say, how do I feel in this moment? What does it feel like in my body? Do that throughout your day so you understand what different emotions actually feel like for you. Because we know that our emotions are created by our thoughts. That's what I teach. But sometimes we've carried that emotional rock around for so long that we just do it. We don't pay attention to what we're thinking. We just react, right? And so if we can slow the process down, notice how we feel, that is our clue that we're thinking something that's creating this. So we can interrupt that model, if you will, the model that I teach. You can interrupt that by practicing other beliefs, by practicing creating different fuel. So if I want to go back to my previous metaphor, my analogy of the rocks in the backpack, right? Sometimes we keep these emotional rocks in our packs because we're afraid to pull them out. They actually become our normal. And so it feels weird to empty our pack, right? It feels safer. But the truth is, this belief leads to suffering. If you feel weighted down by your emotional rocks that are in your pack, that you're carrying around, I invite you to unzip your backpack and start pulling those rocks out, those emotional rocks, one by one. Hold them, notice them, acknowledge them, allow them, and then set them down. If you want to learn more about processing emotions, I invite you to click the link in the show notes for what I call Processing Emotions Now. It's a free PDF that will walk you through the process that I kind of touched on through this podcast. And it will help you practice becoming more aware of what an emotion feels like. And through this practice, you're going to learn that your emotions won't hurt you and that it totally is optional to suffer. You can process the emotional pain that we feel sometimes, we feel often. But by processing it, that prevents the suffering. Processing is the superpower that I talked about. Processing the emotions is the superpower. And then it opens up space in your pack to create more of the emotions that will fuel the actions that you take in your life to create a life you love. You are the driver of your car. You get to decide what fuel you put in it. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, I would love it if you would share it with your friends and family and leave me a rating and review. If you'd like to learn more about what life coaching is, please schedule a free discovery call with me where we can work together through something that's causing you a problem. Just go to my website, seasons-coaching.com, and you can also find information about my Seasons of Joy one-on-one coaching program and my Seasons of Joy community. Have a joyful week, and I'll see you next time.